Hello everyone, I am the Weather Dude. Welcome back, and today we are giving the latest forecast on Invest 96L. So to find out more about Invest 96L, stay tuned for the whole video and enjoy. If you'd like staying up to date with the latest weather forecasts and updates, then please consider hitting the subscribe button below. Let's see how fast we can get to 2,000 subscribers. Also, to help this video's performance very much, please consider clicking the like button and sharing this video with your friends. Also, please consider watching the whole video. Thank you. Now let's get on with today's video. And I know that 2020 Atlantic hurricane season has been so very busy and very devastating to some people, including myself, but yet again, we have another system. And this has been lurking around the Caribbean for a little while now. And yes, has a 90% chance to develop. This is Invest 96L we'll be talking about today. It is a very vigorous tropical wave located over the Caribbean. It's tracking towards the ABC Islands and Jamaica through the weekend. Interest there should definitely keep watching the storm. It's also heading towards Honduras and Nicaragua, probably heading towards Central America first. Because what's going to happen is, as you'll see in the models later, and what I'm thinking is possibly going to happen, is that it's going to head towards Honduras and Nicaragua, and then stall, and then shoot back north, maybe heading towards Florida, maybe heading towards Cuba, or eastern portions of Cuba, or maybe western Cuba, and then heading over Florida. So you'll see in the models definitely a lot of possibilities here. 90% chance of forming within the next 5 days, but there's also a 90% chance that it'll form within the next 2 days. So next day or so, the NHC is thinking this could develop into a depression or storm. Heavy rainfall, again, for areas that could be affected, ABC Islands, Jamaica, as well as Central America. So right now, this storm does have winds of 30 miles an hour, with winds gusting over 40 miles per hour. Pressure is pretty low at 1,007 millibars. Obviously, it could be a lot lower once it starts developing. The pressure will probably get a lot lower. It doesn't look, I wouldn't say a surface. There is definitely a disturbance there, but it's more of just a vigorous tropical wave with a lot of convection. Not seeing too much in the way of spin. There's definitely some mid to high level counterclockwise flow in there. I can see it. All right, but there's also some convection well outside the storm. So you can tell this thing is trying to definitely, it's growing its lungs, as we will call it. It's trying to breathe a little bit more. Now, looking at the sea surface temperature anomalies, now I know that when Hurricane Zeta passed through, we did have a little bit of a cool down in parts of the central Gulf of Mexico, but the eastern Gulf of Mexico actually warmed up quite a bit, which is pretty weird. But the Caribbean is still slightly above average, but if this tracks near the southeast coast or in the extreme eastern Gulf, this is where waters are more moderate, like 1.5 to 3 degrees Celsius is above average, as opposed to the Caribbean, which is like 0.5 degree to 1 degree above average. So definitely a bit more above average towards the southeast coast, so maybe some better developing conditions up there. Because as you can see, Caribbean, yes, will ultimately be warmer. Obviously, sea surface temperatures there are 29 to 30 Celsius, while the eastern Gulf is in the low 80s, and so is the southeast coast right there. Right? But look at the northern Gulf. I mean, Zeta was supposed to weaken before landfall, and somehow it actually strengthened. Now, the only good thing I could say is when Zeta came through is that now the water has cooled down even more in the northern Gulf, so this will lessen your chance of getting hit by yet another hurricane, which I know we don't want that either, but some could be developing, okay, down here in the Caribbean and maybe even through the Gulf or even the Western Atlantic. So here's what a low pressure is now. All right, this is actually the 12Z update from 8 o'clock. At 71 degrees west and 15 degrees north is where the storm is located, basically due south of Haiti and the Dominican Republic. All right, so what do the models say? The model tracking guidance. So a lot of them having headed to the west. I mean, pretty much all of them, I'd say a good 95% have it heading towards Central America, but a couple have already started to hint at maybe it'll draw north. All right, the models don't actually advance that far yet, so like they don't want to take it too far. But some models actually do bring it north, and one has it going straight towards Miami and Homestead. All right, now here's some of the GEFS model tracks, and guys, I gotta say this is really scary, especially considering look at when the storm tracks west. All right, the GEFS model tracks. The pressure is overall pretty high, which means the winds are pretty low, which is a good thing, right? Maybe around 990, 1,000 millibars pressure. Nothing too much, nothing bad compared to what we've seen this year, right? Maybe a tropical storm. But notice as it stalls, and notice when it heads towards the north. Look how low the pressure is now. We're talking about 960 millibars. Some models bring it down as low as 940 millibars of pressure. Like we're talking like Cat 3 plus at that stage, like Cat 2 to Cat 3 plus. So this could be a beast. Notice, and here's the black line is like the sum of all the models, like summing them all together. As it heads towards Central America, 990. But once it gets ready to hit Cuba, look at this, 975, 972. And that's just the average out of all these models. All right, so let's look at the GEPS model tracks. I don't think there's a 12Z for these set of model tracks yet. All right, now look at this. Right towards Central America, there you go. All right, very strong tropical storm, and then obviously pressure could fall to like 980 maybe as it heads towards Florida. Like I said, some of the models don't quite advance that far yet. Some, like these, some models are advancing it that far. It depends which model you look at. Some of the intensity guidance, a few do make it a Cat 1 hurricane. Most make it a strong tropical storm. One model actually does make it a Cat 3, which that's usually the ship model is usually one of those models that does that. But it could very well. I mean, you saw those ensemble models, it could very well do so. And some have it staying as a weak tropical storm, then maybe becoming a more moderate tropical storm later. But a few do make it a hurricane. I think it is a possibility. It's definitely in a realm of possibility here. All right, wind shear. Where the storm is located for right now. Located, again, pretty much due south of Haiti, Dominican Republic. So wind shear overall is pretty low. I'll move this over so you can see the key there. Overall, about 20 knots or less of shear. And this is basically, actually, let me change my color to neon so you guys can see it better. There we go. So there's a storm's path right there, staying in this general zone for the next few days. Overall, staying in shear that's less than 30 knots. It might get a bit stronger. But if the storm decides to come up and track towards eastern Cuba, the shear is a bit higher there, maybe around 40 knots. But if it decides to go a bit further west and go right over western Cuba and towards the Bahamas, there's actually a pocket in there where the wind shear is less than 20 knots still. So that may help it develop a bit more. And then again, the shear, like we saw with Zeta, there was strong shear in the northern central Gulf. They were like, okay, this is definitely going to weaken up until landfall, but still a dangerous threat. Zeta never weakened. I mean, it did weaken when it made landfall in the Yucatan Peninsula, sure, because it hit land. But once it got off land, it strengthened and it never weakened. It was pretty much a near Cat, I would pretty much call it near Cat 3 at landfall because it was 1 mile an hour away from it. Kind of like Hurricane Michael was 1 mile an hour from Cat 5 and it turned out to be a Cat 5. This Zeta was kind of the same way. But Zeta never weakened, all right, because the shear kept backing off as Zeta was coming in. And I think it could have been protected by an upper level high. That could have been a possibility. And who knows, the same thing may happen to this. There may appear to be a lot of shear now, but that may not be the case later. All right, so ensemble probabilities, chances of development. This is the FNMOC and the GEM models. As you can see, definitely about 50 to 60% chance of development. Obviously, the NHG is giving it a 90% chance of development. But again, these are ensemble models, so there's a lot of different models going into this. So a few outliers could be saying a 0% chance. You never know what kind of models you're dealing with, but still, nonetheless, a very high chance of development. And when you look at the 850 millibar vorticity signature right now, actually, that's a bad. There we go. So that's where the storm is right now. That's where the circular energy is. That's where the storm is right now. And I believe whatever is left of Zeta's out here somewhere. That storm is long gone now, but definitely brought some snow to the northeast. And in my next upload for today, I will actually be talking about more snowstorms potentially for both the northeast and the north central. So consider checking that out after this video as well, as always. Now, when you look at the dry air map, take a look at this. A lot of convection around the storm, and there's really no dry air to be found. All right, there's a bit drier, some dry air towards northeast, but not really affecting the storm much at all. There is definitely a lot of dry air in the Gulf from what was behind Zeta. All right, but for its next few days, while it stays in the Caribbean, it's kind of like the same with Zeta. As long as Zeta stayed in the Caribbean, it could develop, like keep on developing and never stop. This could be the same way, but once it starts tracking north, you guys got to remember, it's pretty much, it's Halloween, right? Happy Halloween, by the way. But it's pretty much Halloween now, so, and into November, you're going to start to see the shear go up a bit more now, kind of like the way it was back in March, right? When way before the season starts, the shear is always high. You're going to gradually see the shear go higher. You're going to see the dry air increase, which means, obviously, the storm's affected more in a negative fashion, and you're going to start to see the waters cool off a little bit. So you're going to start to see that gradual trend, and this is why development close to home at this time of year is very bad, because Caribbean can still be a hotspot for development all the way through the end of November. A place like the Gulf of Mexico doesn't look too good for development right now, but the Caribbean is still definitely a hotspot, and we definitely have to watch for that. So GFS model, I'm going to show you the GFS, the GEM, like the Canadian model, and the European model. All right, so stick around for that. So we got the GFS model. This is one of the models I definitely say makes it a bit more of a beast versus the other two models, and you'll see that as we progress here. But here is 2 p.m. on Wednesday afternoon. And we're a few days out by this point, so it's already starting to it's already stalled near Nicaragua and Honduras. It's already starting to move north at this point. And this is as we head to Thursday morning, November 5th. Look at the tight pressure isolines. All right, look how we're starting to see a lot more convection to the north of the system. And overall, actually, okay, so I thought we were able to get a model sound. We might try again. All right, but watch this. Look at this. 970 millibars of pressure, very tight pressure isolines, makes landfall right there in western Cuba, and it's already starting to affect Florida at this point. All right, now we can get a sounding. There we go. I don't know what happened there. Shear is not too bad, 35 knots. And if the storm grows enough, it can actually start to resist some of that shear. It can build like what we call a shield around it that could protect it. But look at the PWatt, 2.29 inches. That's a lot of precipitable water. But look how massive this thing is. Like, look at the rain. Some of the bands are extending into northern Florida. We got still the southern extent of the storm is all the way down here. Like, what I've just outlined is the entire storm. Even though this is like the hurricane itself, there's a lot of precipitation around it. So it's got like a big precipitation shield. Then it moves. Look at this. Almost looks like what was that Hurricane Irma a little bit. When Irma was forecast to go over the western coast of Florida, it's kind of like what this is doing. All right, a little bit of a different scenario, but going right up the western coast of Florida, which would be very bad for people. If a storm goes up the west coast of Florida, the entire of Florida is affected. I mean, the west coast, Orlando, and the east coast are all affected by it. I mean, this storm is pretty massive. Then moves to the north, into the northeast, and could combine with another snowstorm, kind of like when Zeta and Billy combined. Well, this could do the same thing. It could combine with another winter storm that's back in the central U.S., but that'll be another video. But that was a GFS model, and here's the GFS still, and I'll show you the cyclonic vorticity signature and what the GFS thinks of that. So here we go. Moves to the north. You can see the purples and the whites already developing. Look at this beast. It's already a beast at this point. I'll show you the wind graph as well so you see how strong it really is. Then it moves up Florida with not really losing much of its energy. Still got a lot of energy, a lot of cyclonic energy in it. Then it may start to lose a bit of it, but still, whatever's left of it will be transferred yet again to the southeast, yet again through the mid-Atlantic. That's also gotten battered this year. And then moving on through the northeast. So how about that wind? So it's already starting to get tropical storm force winds by between November 3rd and November 4th. All right, here's the 5th. At 2 a.m. in the morning, you can see it's already starting to develop. And then we get some very dark reds and light purples. So Cat 1 hurricane at this point. And I think that's what the GFS model is calling for. A very strong Category 1 hurricane, but the pressure is very low. The storm is very large, kind of like Superstorm Sandy a little bit. All right, you can see the tropical storm force winds are very large. Like literally, the area I'm outlining in black is where the tropical storm force winds are. All right, so that's a pretty big area of tropical storm force winds. Then it moves its way up Florida and then in through the mid-Atlantic states. Now the GEM and the European model, these models are a bit more calm. I would say GEM model is the most calm, but European is it's calmer than the GFS, but not like as boring as the GEM model has it. So here's the GEM model. All right, let's just show you here. So 993 millibars of pressure makes landfall in Central America, probably as a stronger tropical storm. All right, then just sits there, stalls. Now this type of scenario would be a disaster for Nicaragua and Honduras as well. But notice how it just sits there and it really never reemerges. There's a lot of tropical convection over here, possibly steered by this high pressure and a remaining low, but there's really nothing left. There's like this is like just organized and draped out over a front. There's no part of the storm left at all, really. All right, so it just stalls over Central America, and then that's the end of it. So GEM and GFS are two very different models in this scenario. Now, Zeta was the last hurricane we had. The next one is actually going to be Eta, which is basically Zeta without the Z. You can pronounce it however you want. All right, but it's basically the storm is ETA. That's literally how it's spelled. So that's the next storm on the list. All right, and notice this is still the GEM model. Tracks towards Central America. All right, and then it kind of stalls out. But notice we might, now if this were to hit Central America, it'd be a disaster. Also because it's going to combine with some more energy left over from a system that's in the Pacific Ocean. All right, so we combine the energy with tropical disturbance with this system as well, and it could be a disaster for Mexico, or southern Mexico and Central America as well. And even part of it You can see part of the storm's energy tries to get closer to Yucatan as well before it starts fading out. You can kind of see that a little bit. Now, the sustained winds of the GEM model, it does have it as a tropical storm. You can barely see it, but there is green to the north of it, and then I know it's hard to see. All right, and then it makes landfall as a tropical storm, and then that's the end of it. Now, the European model, it's kind of like a good combination of the GEM and the European model. Yes, the European has a heading west, a good tropical storm, right? Some good energy, makes landfall in Central America. It stalls off, and it appears that way, and then guess what? Something breaks off right towards eastern Cuba, right in between Cuba and the Dominican Republic and Haiti. Now, there it is moving through eastern Cuba, and that's as far as the European model goes. Only about 10 days. And then there's the Bahamas right there. So this is definitely something to keep our eyes over, or something to keep our eyes on through the next 5 to 10 days. Definitely. Where do you live? Like, if you guys live in the Gulf Coast, if you live in Central America, the Yucatan, Cuba, and Caribbean islands, as well as the Bahamas, if you live in any of those places, definitely keep an eye on this. All right. So again, Gulf Coast, Central America, Caribbean islands, including the Bahamas. All right, all those areas, you definitely need to keep watch over this. ABC Islands, Jamaica, because you guys could be affected by this through the next 5 to 10 days. So stay tuned for updates. I am the Weather Dude, signing off. Till next time, stay safe, stay awesome, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.